Gaza. The casualties come as the IDF continues its operations to pursue Hamas and secure aid distribution centers. ILTV military correspondent David Matlin has more.
Well, it began with tough news here at IDF headquarters in Tel Aviv and really resonated across the country. 5 IDF soldiers killed, 14 wounded from a roadside bomb in combat operations in the northern Gaza Strip. This brings the total number of fallen IDF soldiers since the beginning of the war to 888. Now, of the fallen soldiers and the injured in this incident, they all served with the Kfir Brigades, an ultra-Orthodox Netzach Yehuda battalion. According to the initial army probe, the soldiers were hit by a bomb planted on the side of the road last night during ground operations in Beit Hanun. Now, the soldiers were all on foot, not in armored vehicles. After the initial explosion, Israeli forces came under intense gunfire as they extracted the casualties. Among the wounded, 2 are listed in serious condition. The military says the area where the attack took place was targeted from the air ahead of the troops' operations, which were conducted under standard protocol. Now, Chief of Staff of the IDF, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, conducted a field visit and an operational assessment Monday in the central Khan Yunis at the heart of the ongoing Operation Gideon's Chariots.
לצד איראן, המיקוד שלנו כרגע, הגזרה המרכזית זה בעזה. פה אנחנו מתמקדים ואנחנו דבקים ונחושים, שזה ברור לכולם, דבקים ונחושים. נשיג את המטרות שאנחנו הגדרנו לעצמנו, חטופים, הכרעת חמאס, החזרת היישובים שלנו בביטחון. אנחנו לא מתכוונים לוותר על אף אחת מהמטרות האלו. אנחנו נמשיך לפעול פה גם בנחישות, גם בהתמדה, גם בעוצמה וגם בתבונה, ואנחנו נוביל פה לניצחון.
For now, combat operations continue, not just in the northern strip, but across the entire Gaza Strip enclave, as the IDF works to squeeze off Hamas's last bastions of control and, of course, work out a way to get those hostages home.
Thank you, David, for that update. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump hosted Prime Minister Netanyahu at the White House as the two leaders confronted an array of high-stakes Middle East issues. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has the full report.
U.S. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu met for dinner and later discussions on the long-term future of Gaza and the prospect of expanding the Abraham Accords to normalize relations, including with Saudi Arabia. Later, the two leaders, joined by key officials from both nations, spoke to reporters while seated at a long table in the White House Blue Room. They celebrated the successful Israeli and U.S. airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities.
We had a great time. I would say it's a lot of work, but we had a great result recently. And we're going to have a lot of great results, so it's great to have you. Thank you very much.
I want to express the appreciation and admiration, not only of all Israelis, but of the Jewish people, and many, many admirers around the world for your leadership of the free world, your leadership of a just cause, and the pursuit of peace and security, which you are leading in many lands, but now especially in the Middle East. We have great opportunities.
Netanyahu then broke the news to the president that he had nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize.
The president has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country and one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, baby.
Trump and Netanyahu had this to say about the future of Gaza.
I think President Trump had a brilliant vision. It's called free choice. You know, if people want to stay, they can stay. But if they want to leave, they should be able to leave. It shouldn't be a prison. It should be an open place and give people a free choice. We're working with the United States very closely about finding countries that will seek to realize what they always say, that they want to give the Palestinians a better future.
And we've had great cooperation from surrounding Israel, surrounding countries, great cooperation from every single one of them. So something good will happen.
Well, joining us now to discuss all the latest from Washington and what we can expect to see between Prime Minister Netanyahu and U.S. President Trump is Yal Marcus from Republicans Overseas Israel. Yal, thank you so much for joining us today. What is your take on this Nobel Peace Prize nomination for President Trump? First things first.
Well, if there's anybody on earth who deserves it, who has worked so hard to bring peace to many regions of the world, it's Donald J. Trump. And, you know, we've had previous presidents, I don't know, like President Obama, who won it for absolutely nothing. And this is a person, contrary to President Obama, who has worked so hard to try to bring peace. He deserves it. I hope people will put their personal feelings aside for him and realize just how influential he's been in the very short time that he's been in office.
Well, even his prior term with the Abraham Accords, certainly a historic change of pace when it comes to Middle Eastern affairs. I want to ask you now about the ceasefire framework, especially given the horrible day that Israel has had in Gaza in the past 24 hours. Is a ceasefire possible? I mean, can an agreement be reached that could potentially even leave Hamas in some form of power?
Well, look, I think the answer with all these questions when it comes to the Middle East comes down to the security of the state of Israel. So whether it's doing a deal with Hamas or doing a deal that you know, this fantasy of a Palestinian homeland, a state, it comes down to, can Israel secure its future and remove the threat that incurred so much damage to the people and to our nation on October 7th. And so fundamentally, what you have on one side is a crumbling axis of evil that, you know, on October 7th was as strong as ever. And today it basically doesn't exist. Hamas sees that. And so the question it becomes, do they want to preserve what little is left in terms of just physical, you know, beings, and agree to leave, agree to disarm, and allow the people of Gaza, which should be their priority, to have a better future? I don't think they're going to do it. I think that they are, you know, unfortunately, life is not something that they necessarily value. They want victory, and they're not going to get it. So unless they come to their senses and are severely pressured by Qatar and the other nations in the Middle East, the UAE, they've been stubborn, and, you know, they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if their definition of victory is the same as the Ayatollahs, as we've seen after the IDF successfully decapitated all of the Hezbollah chain of command, then I wish them the same victory. But I do want to ask you, we've seen a bit of a revival of U.S.-Israel relations under President Trump. Do you think that we'll continue to see this as Israel faces ongoing threats? We have, you know, the Houthis in Yemen. We have, of course, the Islamic regime in Iran. Will we continue to see this ironclad alliance between the two countries?
Absolutely. We have never had a U.S. president who has been more pro-Israel than Donald J. Trump. And it's not just President Trump, but look at his cabinet. Amazing individuals who are strong, who are pro-Israel, pro-America, believe in strength, peace through strength, and have delivered on that in such a short period of time. So I think the future is extraordinarily bright, brighter than it's been maybe since the establishment of the State of Israel, maybe Six-Day War, certainly in our lifetime. And so I think the future is very bright. We have an administration now in Washington, D.C. that's actually pragmatic. They're practical. They're not going to bring the same old solutions that have never worked, that have never been agreed to by any of the parties, and keep forcing them down the throats of parties who don't want them. Instead, what you have is a president who's practical and pragmatic, who understands the reality on the street, and who has already and will continue to think differently about solving these problems. Just the problem that we have in Gaza. You know, we have millions of Palestinians who are living in misery because of what Hamas did. So exactly as Bibi Netanyahu just said, let's give them a choice. You can stay or you can leave, and you can make a decision about what's best for you and your family. That's humanitarian on the highest level. You know, and this is a president who, again, will think differently.
I did want to ask you about Gaza. We are almost out of time, but just very quickly, do you think that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have a shared vision of the future in Gaza? And if so, what do you expect to see in the coming days, weeks, and months?
100%. At the end of the day, the security of the state of Israel is number one, and any deal that undermines that or continues to be a threat to the state of Israel will not be accepted, not by Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli people, but also by President Trump. So the future, I think, is very bright. I think that, again, they're going to be approaching this in a different kind of way, trying to creatively think of solutions to deal with the underlying problems. In President Trump, you have a great once-in-a-lifetime kind of partner. And I do think we're going to have a better future there. I do think we're going to come to some kind of agreement for the future of the Palestinian people without the presence of Hamas leading them.
All right, we are out of time, but I want to thank you, Yal Marcus from Republicans Abroad Israel. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Israel Bonds, the heartbeat of solidarity, the powerhouse of support. When the Israeli-Hamas war hit, Israel Bonds stood tall, proving we're more than just an investment, we're a lifeline. Israel Bonds pledges to ensure Israel thrives and flourishes. Investing in Israel Bonds isn't just a financial move, it's a declaration for resilience, strength, and a better future for Israel. Join us and let solidarity echo through generations.
When Israel is under fire, the world watches. But we act. Since 1901, Jewish National Fund USA has stood with our homeland. From the moment missiles rained down, we were there, caring for children of essential workers, turning shelters into sanctuaries, providing fire trucks and more. Israel is our family, and you always show up for family. To support the people of Israel for today and tomorrow, turn to the trusted name in philanthropy, Jewish National Fund USA.
Well, as the Islamic Republic attempts to save face following Israel's incredible success in the recent war, the president of the Islamic regime, Masoud Pezeshkian, granted an interview to Western media and had a lot to say. Let's take a look. Tucker Carlson, the controversial former Fox News host, is facing criticism after releasing a new interview with Masoud Pezeshkian, the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Carlson, who has gained a reputation for shilling for authoritarian regimes, welcomed Pezeshkian to his show, allowing him to spread regime propaganda without fact-check or pushback. In the interview, Pezeshkian claimed that the chant "Death to America" doesn't actually mean what it says, dismissing it as a symbolic slogan against oppression. He also denied that the regime ever attempted to assassinate President Donald Trump, despite the ongoing investigations into plots by Iranian agents to carry out the attack. Ayatollah Khamenei's own comments in recent years, however, dispute this.
این رو برای حضرات بزرگان آمریکایی روشن کنم. مرگ بر آمریکا یعنی مرگ بر ترامپ و جان بولتون و پومپئو.
Pezeshkian also bizarrely tried to claim that Iranians have never killed Americans, a claim flatly contradicted by decades of evidence.
Have you ever heard that an Iranian killing an American? Have you ever heard that?
Since 1979, the Islamic regime has been responsible for the deaths of over 1,200 Americans through its terror networks and proxy wars, including attacks on U.S. diplomats, troops, and civilians. The interview comes amid ongoing regional escalation and as Prime Minister Netanyahu meets with U.S. officials in Washington over the Gaza war. This week, President Donald Trump stated he also hopes to reach a comprehensive agreement with the Islamic regime that may include the removal of sanctions in the right conditions.
One of the things we have with Iran is, we have they call biting, they are very biting sanctions, and I would love to be able to, at the right time, take those sanctions off, give them a chance at rebuilding, because I'd like to see Iran build itself back up.
These discussions and the debate over how to deal with the regime are expected to continue in the coming days and weeks. Well, a third round of talks is underway in Doha, Qatar, for a hostage and ceasefire deal, as Israel and Hamas continue to speak indirectly with each other. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian has the latest on the mounting pressure for a deal to be secured. And who will be joining these negotiations next? Shosh, what can you tell us?
Emily, we are learning that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff plans on joining these talks later in the week. Is that a good sign? Very possibly so. We know that Steve Witkoff has been very instrumental in securing hostage releases and ceasefires in the past. More recently, he was very much so involved in the release of the last living American hostage, Idan Alexander. As Prime Minister Netanyahu was at the White House with President Trump and other senior officials, negotiations to secure a deal to bring back the 50 hostages and end hostilities in Gaza are ongoing. As Hamas continues to hold innocent Israelis in dire conditions and IDF soldiers continue to get targeted by terrorists as their own people suffer in the Gaza Strip, American officials are hoping the terror group Hamas will finally end its reign and submit to a deal that will end the brutal war. On Monday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said a priority for the president right now is to not only end the war, but bring home the hostages still held in Gaza.
Right now, the president is focused on today and to get the Hamas to agree to this ceasefire. I don't want to comment on the details of the arrangement out of respect for these negotiations, but an agreeable and appropriate ceasefire proposal has been sent to Hamas. And I can also tell you Special Envoy Witkoff intends to travel to Doha later this week, where he will continue to engage in these discussions. And the Qataris and the Egyptians have been incredibly helpful partners in mediating these negotiations and discussions to bring peace.
Since Trump appointed U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in January, he's been credited with bringing home dozens of living hostages, giving them a second chance at life. Witkoff has sat in negotiations between Israel and Hamas for many months now, and most recently helped bring home Tenafly native and hostage Idan Alexander. Emily, we're learning right now that the conversations that are happening in Doha are centered around the humanitarian aid mechanism. As we know, that Hamas does not want this Israeli and American-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation anymore operating inside of the Gaza Strip. A topic of conversation at the moment they're focused on is also the IDF's withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and what that could possibly look like. This is all according to Israeli media reports. Emily?
All right, thank you, Shosh, for that update. Now, the IDF has released the first video footage from its airstrike on the cargo ship Galaxy Leader, which has been held by Houthi terrorists since November 2023. The IDF used targeted strikes on the vessel owned by Israeli businessman Rami Ungar because the Houthis have been using the ship as a strategic asset in the Red Sea. The Houthis equipped the ship with radar systems to monitor maritime traffic in international waters in order to aid their terror activities. The Galaxy Leader is a Bahamian-flagged vessel seized about a month and a half after the outbreak of the war in Gaza, when Houthi forces took control of the ship and its 25-member multinational crew. The special U.S. envoy in Lebanon says that he was unbelievably satisfied with Lebanon's reply to the U.S. on disarming Hezbollah. The U.S. says Lebanon will fully disarm Hezbollah within 4 months in exchange for an IDF withdrawal to the international border between Israel and Lebanon. We have more from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
In a meeting coming only hours after IDF airstrikes on Hezbollah targets, U.S. Envoy Thomas Barak said that Lebanon responded positively to a U.S. proposal that would see Hezbollah fully disarmed within 4 months. In exchange, Israel will halt airstrikes and withdraw troops from several outposts in South Lebanon, still occupied since the war last year.
We're creating a go-forward plan. To create that, we need dialogue. What the government gave us was something spectacular. In a very short period of time, in a very complicated manner, I'm unbelievably satisfied with the response.
According to Barak, both Israel and Lebanon are trying to reach the same goal, the notion of a stand-down agreement for a cessation of hostilities.
We didn't have the opportunities that we have now. My belief is Israel wants peace with Lebanon. They do. How to get there is a challenge. Hezbollah is a political party. It also has a militant aspect to it. Hezbollah needs to see that there's a future for them, that road is not harnessed just solely against them, and that there's an intersection of peace and prosperity for them also.
Barak said that Israel and Lebanon are effectively on a road toward peace.
I think both countries are trying to give the same thing. The notion of a stand-down agreement, of the cessation of hostilities, and a road to peace. My honest feeling is the Israelis do not want war with Lebanon. They're not parasitic. They have no desire to take over Lebanon.
The US envoy said that the dialogue between Israel and Syria is ongoing and positive. Sounding an optimistic tone, he said that the way of peace was now possible and President Trump will make it happen, but also cautioned that the president is short on patience.
The dialogue has started between Syria and Israel, just as the dialogue needs to be reinvented by Lebanon. So come on, get with it. Now is the time. You have the President of the United States who will make it happen, who's strong on courage. You've seen what he's done. And he came out on national television globally saying he sponsored Lebanon. So he's strong on courage, he's short on patience.
Well, Air France has announced the resumption of flights to Israel for the first time since the outbreak of the war with the Islamic Republic. Now, while Israelis have the option to fly in and out of Europe, direct flights to the United States will take longer to resume. Now, let's go to our ILTV correspondent, Devo Klein. Devo, people are waiting patiently to see if their summer plans are back on. What can you tell us about what's happening?
Yes, Emily. So the stress has definitely been high for Israelis looking to leave the country for the summertime and escape these hot summers that we get here in Israel. Now, with Air France resuming flights in and out of Tel Aviv as of Monday, Israelis now have a way to get in and out of the country, a first since the start of Israel's war with the Islamic Republic. Israelis can now fly to France and continue their journey from there. I can tell you, Emily, that here in Israel, when Ben Gurion Airport was not operating, excluding, of course, the special rescue flights that at the time brought Israelis home and allowed foreigners and tourists to leave, Israelis here on the ground were getting very creative with different ways to leave the country. So much so, by the way, that the Israeli government issued travel warnings, basically telling Israelis not to use neighboring countries like Jordan or even Egypt to leave because it posed a massive security threat. Obviously, Israelis still made the cross into Jordan despite these warnings, but now this risky move is no longer needed. So if you booked a flight and they canceled it, have no fear, because now there are options. Air France will operate a non-stop flight from Tel Aviv to Paris. Lufthansa announced that they will resume flights on August 1st, and we await announcements from U.S. carriers like United, Delta, and more.
Air France's decision to resume flights comes after the EASA, the European Union's aviation safety agency, have removed the restrictions on Israeli airspace that have been in place since June 13th. For this reason, Lufthansa also decided to resume flights, but only starting on August 1st. In addition, the Madrid-based Air Europa also announced resumption of service beginning next week. U.S. carriers have yet to resume services to Israel, even as the busy summer travel season is well underway. Delta have announced that they will resume flights starting September, and United Airlines could start activity back up next month. As restrictions slowly begin to ease up, many anticipate that flights will resume sooner than announced.
Now, Emily, it's difficult to say when exactly we'll be getting direct flights to the U.S. and back, but with European routes now starting to open, the urgency of this whole thing can ease slightly. Air travel between Israel and Europe is now open, and we expect other airlines to follow suit. Back to you, Emily.
All right, thanks for that update, Devo. We'll hope for the full resumption of all of these airlines in the near future. For now, let's take a look. We open in Gaza, where 5 Israeli soldiers were killed and 14 injured in northern Gaza. The casualties come as the IDF continues its operations to pursue Hamas and secure aid distribution centers. ILTV military correspondent David Matlin has more.
Well, it began with tough news here at IDF headquarters in Tel Aviv and really resonated across the country. 5 IDF soldiers killed, 14 wounded from a roadside bomb and combat operations in the northern Gaza Strip.
This brings the total number of fallen IDF soldiers since the beginning of the war to 888. Now, of the fallen soldiers and the injured in this incident, they all served with the Kfir Brigades, an ultra-Orthodox Netzach Yehuda battalion. According to the initial army probe, the soldiers were hit by a bomb planted on the side of the road last night during ground operations in Beit Hanun. Now, the soldiers were all on foot, not in armored vehicles, after the initial explosion. Israeli forces came under intense gunfire as they extracted the casualties. Among the wounded, 2 are listed in serious condition. The military says the area where the attack took place was targeted from the air ahead of the troops' operations, which were conducted under standard protocol. Now, Chief of Staff of the IDF, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir conducted a field visit and operational assessment Monday in the central Khan Yunis at the heart of the ongoing operation, Gideon's Chariots.
לצד איראן, המיקוד שלנו כרגע, הגזרה המרכזית זה בעזה. פה אנחנו מתמקדים ואנחנו דבקים ונחושים, שזה ברור לכולם, דבקים ונחושים, להשיג את המטרות שאנחנו הגדרנו לעצמנו, חטופים, הכרעת חמאס, החזרת היישובים שלנו בביטחון. אנחנו לא מתכוונים לוותר על אף אחת מהמטרות האלו. אנחנו נמשיך לפעול פה גם בנחישות, גם בהתמדה, גם בעוצמה וגם בתבונה, ואנחנו נוביל פה לניצחון.
For now, combat operations continue, not just in the northern strip, but across the entire Gaza Strip enclave, as the IDF works to squeeze off Hamas's last bastions of control and, of course, work out a way to get those hostages home.
Thank you, David, for that update. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump hosted Prime Minister Netanyahu at the White House as the two leaders confronted an array of high-stakes Middle East issues. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has the full report.
U.S. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu met for dinner and later discussions on the long-term future of Gaza and the prospect of expanding the Abraham Accords to normalize relations, including with Saudi Arabia. Later, the two leaders, joined by key officials from both nations, spoke to reporters while seated at a long table in the White House Blue Room. They celebrated the successful Israeli and U.S. airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities.
We had a great time. I would say it's a lot of work, but we had a great result recently. And we're going to have a lot of great results, so it's great to have you. Thank you very much.
I want to express the appreciation and admiration not only of all Israelis, but of the Jewish people and many, many admirers around the world for your leadership of the free world, your leadership of a just cause, and the pursuit of peace and security, which you are leading in many lands, but now especially in the Middle East. We have great opportunities.
Netanyahu then broke the news to the president that he had nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize.
The president has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country and one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, baby.
Trump and Netanyahu had this to say about the future of Gaza.
I think President Trump had a brilliant vision. It's called free choice. You know, if people